Okay.
Let's start.
Good evening, everybody, and a very warm welcome to all of you for this Thursday series that we host every Thursday evening at 6 p.m., which is called Conversations That Count, the new CTC to enable personal best. And we are very fortunate that this evening we have Anil Sardana with us. I have known Anil right from the 1980s when he was graduating from Delhi College of Engineering. We had gone there on behalf of Aisha to look at talent and met Anil and liked his, the potential one saw in him. I'm so glad that, what he has done with his life is quite amazing. As a young engineer, you see somebody with a lot of potential and enthusiasm. And then to see that person take that raw material and potential and go all the way to head a large organization and then make impact in the process is very gratifying to see that, to see a young person, because a lot of people have promised when they graduate from college, but not all of them go on to utilize the talent in the best possible way. So thank you, Anil, for coming this evening and being part of this conversation. And thank you, my fellow student colleagues, for being part of the panel. So, the format is that we first begin by the students sharing their own understanding and insights from the topic of today, which is sourcing purpose and discovering one's purpose. So may I invite Priyanka to open the conversation, and Priyanka, share with us your insights. Yes.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Anil, sir. First of all, I would like to thank you for this opportunity, and it's a great privilege to have this conversation and discussion with you, sir. So my realization is that I believe that every choice that we make in our lives, it's completely dependent on our value system. And for instance, even the inspiration and the role model that we have in our lives is based on our values. And I feel it's not always easy to figure out the value system of oneself. For example, in my case itself, I know I'm a compassionate person. So I believe compassion is one of my values, but I'm really not sure whether I'm a spiritual person or not. So I some way feel to understand my values. I have started being very mindful of the choices I make in my life, and I've started reflecting on my daily actions. So that has made me realize like what my values are actually. And I also some way feel that even the career choices that we make, and also with whom we talk, and the relationship that we share in our lives, it's also completely dependent on our values. And one more thing is that it's very important to understand our values, because it would help us to evolve into a better person. And that's how we can create a future for ourselves, like the future that we want. So values are very important in the growth and development of a person. So this was my understanding from that topic.
Okay, Pawan, do you want to go next?
Sure, sir. Thank you. A very good evening to all the panel members and the participants. In one of our self-leadership session, we discussed on an article, 6 ways to discover and choose your values. I think the values that we carry will define the kind of person we are at present and what we actually want to be. I also believe that our value system will majorly influence our purpose of life. Only when we get to know the sense of purpose, we can achieve something really big. The process of finding the purpose and value requires a lot of self-reflection, listening to others, and finding a passion. Also, people tend to develop something new which they lack during this process, which is completely wrong in my opinion. We should focus on what we have, what we are good at, and what we are curious about. Then only we can develop a sense of purpose. And on the same lines, I have done my self-introspection. Well, it took quite some time, but for me, I realized that on a professional front, my values will be being loyal and accountable. I think our family, the way we are brought up, also play a crucial role in building our value system. And these are my takeaways from the session. Thank you.
Wonderful. So Pooja, do you want to build upon what Pawan said?
Sure, sir. So, sir, my key takeaway and learning from the session on values and the purpose of living would be to never leave your childlike curiosity. So from my younger childhood and younger age, we develop some interest and values that give us major happiness. So what I think right now is happening is that we stop being curious about the new experiences, and we assume and we follow the routine. So we need to keep our childhood curiosity in order to learn, invent, and explore new things. and I could connect my younger self with few of the key values that are commitment and sensitivity that I would not compromise even now.
Very nice. Thank you, Pooja. Pranjal, do you want to build upon what Pooja just said?
Sure, sir. So my extractions from the sessions with you are like, firstly, I noticed that the life itself presents an endless series of decisions to make, that can be large and small, that also require to take difficult choices. So while many factors are involved, the critical factor in deciding may be our core values. So these values tell what kind of person we are or want to be, and also provide guidelines or even imperatives for our actions. So we learn many of our values from our parents, teachers, religious leaders, and the society around. So we have also probably rebelled against some of those values at times, or changed our mind as we have learned more about ourselves and the world around. So my key takeaway is the values can be personified in people that we love and admire. So during the complete process, I identified that people who are important role models or valued connections for me are, uh, first, my grandfather, whom I can admire for his discipline, my mother for her love, my colleagues and teachers for their knowledge, and my friends for their loyalty. Although it was very hard to believe, knowing core values can help reduce stress, communicate with more compassion, increase self confidence, and power up or willpower. Thank you.
Very good. So, Tanmay, do you want to now build upon what your colleagues have said?
Yes, sir. Sure. Good evening, everyone. So we have also learned about Ikigai during our self-leadership sessions, and I would like to share my learning on it. So on a very basic terms, Ikigai basically means a reason to jump off in the morning. Now, the problem in most of us is that we have stopped being curious about new experiences, as we discussed during the class, and that which is very true. It has become very monotonous. And we need to start asking ourselves what makes us feel alive. What I have learned from our sessions is that achievement is quickly becoming the main priority for most of us. We just follow whatever makes us successful in any manner without thinking what we actually want to do. And that's what Ikigai tells us to do, right? But we also struggle to find out what we are meant to do, what excites us, what makes us is the loose sense of time. Now that is very important because let's say when I was working in my office last time, I was always looking at the 8-hour clock when it comes to 8-hour. Now, what I believe is that Ikigai is very important for us to find because we need to live our life and not just survive it. So that's my learning. Thank you.
Great. So Pratik, would you like to round up the conversation on behalf of the students?
Sure, sir. It's an honor to be here and sharing the stage with such honorable people. First of all, I realized Ikigai is basically an intersection of all of the good things that I have and what I love doing. After the session, basically, I worked to find out what were my core values, which turned out to be family, compassion, gratitude, adventure, at the same time, freedom as well. So I ended up jotting down the things that I like to do and things that I'm good at, and it created major impacts onto me. It made me feel having a purpose. This is something which was very lacking in me even before joining Soil. I was someone who did not know exactly where I wish to go or exactly what do I wish to do. But then making sure, knowing that why am I doing this? I ended up getting a certain purpose in my life. It encouraged reflection. This is something that was seriously lacking in me. Every day at the end of the day, I make sure that I look back at the day and try to understand where did things go right or where did things go wrong. And I'm not a person who can actually write a diary, but this is something that helps me actually analyze the day and what my reactions to certain situations were. I also realized that happiness lies in simplicity. We've been engineered as a student, and the way we've been brought up, I felt that I was engineered in a way that happiness is about materials. But something that I kept on ignoring throughout my life was that it can be very simple and you can just end up being happy for no reason. And that has actually helped me a lot, enjoying each and every day. And I take every day as it comes. it has definitely changed the way I see everything I do. It made me kinder to myself. I'm more active about my meals also. Uh, I have been highly ignorant about the food that I have and all of the personal care that I should be taking. And it has actually reflected overall in terms of my routine. And it actually was an invaluable session for all of us. So thank you so much, Anil sir.
Pratik, I want to ask you another question. You are attending this course on the future of capitalism, along with students from ICE Business School in Europe, IMD Switzerland, Copenhagen Business School, Shizenken University, and so on. And all of you are exploring this topic on what is the future of capitalism going to be like. And we are trying to expose you to that so that you develop a new sense of purpose in your life. And together, the young people can take responsibility to make business as a platform for more good. Now, in the first few sessions that you've had, and then the earlier sessions you had on self-leadership, what's been the interface between this new awareness along with your global peers and the inner journey that you were on as a part of the self-leadership class?
Sir, first of all, I'm really grateful that I was selected for this particular course, Future of Capitalism. We've kind of traveled around multiple cities in spite of sitting in India. I've come across Uganda as a nation. I've come across Vatican City. I've come across Bangladesh. And the major theme between the current sessions that have happened is how do you grow, taking everyone into consideration. And connecting all of the dots, today itself, we had a session on design thinking where I was having a conversation with Vijay sir. And I am so glad that I am attending this course because we had a very good conversation regarding where the world is heading. And as a future management professional and as a future leader, what are all of the things that I need to take care of? Because my simple question I asked Vijay sir today was that, sir, at times there are these instances where I really feel helpless. Will I be able to make a change or not? And I said that, sir, I feel that I'm a very small component of the whole ecosystem. And how do I come out stronger than what I was, and how do I kind of end up making an impact? And then we had a very good discussion where sir also jotted the fact that, see, capitalism is something which can't be ignored, which cannot be completely removed out of the society. But going forward, Pratik, you will be a leader and you will be someone who has to take care of things, who has to be mindful about the fact that there are other people as well. So today, after I've not completed the complete course yet, but after self-leadership, even design thinking, what we are going through, and then future of capitalism, I surely feel much more confident about the approach that I need to have. I'm sure where I wish to take things.
Thank you, Pratik. Now turning to our guest for this evening, Anil, tell us about your story. Tell us about also, your early part of your life, people who influenced you, and all the amazing things that have happened since then. So give us a feel of Anil, the person, and your personal and professional journey. Yes.
So thanks, Anil. In fact, let me first thank another Anil. As we talk 42 years reflecting on our first interface way back in 1980. One can't forget that how we've been in touch and how we've looked at each other. So I must say, I've been an admirer, and I must acknowledge the fact that you're doing a great service by, promoting this kind of an activity through an institution where you're able to build future leaders and great citizens. So thank you so much for doing so. And thank you for inviting me today. And it'll be a pleasure to engage, interact, and learn in the bargain. So I would say that, born out of a government service family, my father was an ICS, and his quest was always that I should follow suit, and therefore the basic discussion that used to take place at home would be typically, sit for UPSC exam, and then there you were. So I did my initial part of schooling in Mumbai, which is where he was at that time. Then he shifted to Delhi, so I followed suit. studied in Sardar Patel Vidyalaya and Hindi medium school. But the interface from one more Guju school in Mumbai to another Guju school in Delhi was a lot easier. And then, of course, after one did his schooling, I went into Delhi College of Engineering. You have already made that. Those were times when we used to have 5-year program. And of course, that time the families were very protected, because I remember having got into IITs, which in Delhi one was getting civil or chemical or something like that. And the family would say, no, you've got to do only what's known to be electrical, mechanical and stuff like that. So, and I must say the vocational part, understanding at that stage to kids like us was very poor. There was no social media for us to accumulate our own knowledge. One would have peer influence. And if you find 3 of your peers are landing into Delhi College, then so would I go there. So that was the easier prey, and therefore one would clearly acknowledge life is very different today compared to what it used to be. And a 5-year course, I did that at Delhi College of Engineering. And then, of course, 2nd April 1980 was my last day there. And I remember same very day, I joined a job. So one never got to see any time. My father told me very clearly, since you're going to be sitting in civil services, you're not going to IIM Calcutta, where I had got into after all those rounds of interviews, etc. One would clearly, reflect and say, somebody would say, that was a great loss. Of course, today where I'm sitting, I wouldn't regret that. But at the same time, the dichotomy at that time was between civil services or a government job versus why the hell do you need to go there that time. So to cut the long story short, one evolved, and over a period of time, this battle between the fact that should you join government versus the fact, no, my temperament does not give me a feeling that I will be a success there, and stuff like that. And I must say this to the team here, that, you talked about, many of you talked about, we get influenced by our childhood interaction, by our peers, friends, teachers. But I was also influenced negatively, I must say, because I would see my father sitting on a rocking chair in the morning, having his cup of tea which the orderly will serve. And I would see, somebody coming and saying, sir, so-and-so episode has happened in because I remember those days in one of the places in UP where he was posted as a collector. And, I was a young kid standing next to him, and I would find that if the phone rings, the orderly would bring that big black instrument, in hand, and keep holding it till the time he's talking. So I somehow had detestation that there was too much of dependence, and there was kind of a bent of slavery between the people who were ruling versus those who were surrogate to them. And that brought a bad feeling in me, somehow negative feeling, that I shouldn't join government. And that's where I ended up debating and, ultimately winning out of my father. The only compromise was that, out of the jobs that I had initially after the college, you mentioned some of those, I don't want to talk about those jobs, but the compromise was that NTPC was getting born. So, okay, if you're not joining government, join public sector. So I was one of the initial employees, joined NTPC, and it was a great learning in terms of how you build an organization from scratch, which in a sector which was completely embroiled into all kind of manipulation and state-of-art gratification techniques and stuff like that, that you actually emerge different. And that's exactly is the kind of value that you enjoy at that time when you're particularly, crossing swords with your own factors of influence coming from the family, that you must join government, versus the fact that you are trying to find your own ways, your own pathways. So 14 years I spent in NTPC. learned a lot. And I would say one looks back with pride in terms of how that institution got built. And in the bargain, the learning cycle was always on. And one was learning every day, every aspect of life, including how to build institutions, including how to build yourself as a good leader, manager, including the fact that what does interface with community mean? Where does community sit in everything that you do or you aim to do? And what's the difference between facade and what's embedded in you? I think that's a very important point, and I would touch that because you want to understand in terms of purpose, you want to understand in terms of values, culture. And I guess a lot of us today see or have to learn to seep through the facade and see as to what's deeply embedded in individuals and how can you actually get to find what the individuals are made of, and then see what's the interface vis-a-vis the larger system. Moving on, so after having spent 14 years in NTPC, my internal desire to be eventually with the private sector was clearly there and deep down. So I moved on with the 5-member team, which was chosen by government to move and undertake reforms in one of the, I would say, virtually municipal run company in Mumbai, which was BACS at that time. The only 2 companies in India which were publicly run, which was BACS and L&T, because the shareholders had no controlling stake by anybody. It was all owned by either financial institutions or public at large. So it was fun transforming that institution. I spent 7 years there. I saw somebody buying the equity of that company. I thought my value system won't sort of match. So you can imagine I've been saying that, how do you start making choices? So I talked about having made a choice after at the family end in terms of not joining what the family wanted versus again, making choice in terms of the fact that that was a lovely institution where I was trying to do transformation, getting all kind of recognition. But then I decided that since somebody else is buying equity, he is going to be in driving seat and I don't want to take names. So I moved and there I was in Tata's. Having spent about 2 decades there, I superannuated and then joined this institution simply with the objective that whatever I have learned over 38 years, now it's 42 years, can I give back to build a better institution? And in that, the definition of building a better institution, we will unfold and talk as we move along. Coming back to purpose, values, and I guess I would admit saying that you discover purpose every time that you launch yourself into different situations. It's not that there is something written on the wall that you can see this is what you're cut for. However, in order for you to discover that purpose, you need to declutter yourself and you need to have a lot of myths demolished around you, because a lot of things will come as a part of the package. But how do you declutter yourself? How do you demystify? And how do you make life simpler for yourself? And as long as our student friends or other colleagues on the call can understand how you can actually convert every aspect in life to simpler hypotheses or simpler questions, it'll be easier for you to understand purpose, and it'll be easier for you to see confluence or convergence between what you are to what you want to be and how you want to make a difference. And I want to build this point. One of the clear word in my life, always for everything that I do, is differentiators. And I clearly feel that my learning curve is on every moment, because I believe that I'm still perhaps 2 out of 10 in my learning curve. There's so much this world has to offer every moment, every day. And I don't think so that every evening, if I reflect, some of you talked about reflection, every evening that you reflect, you find that today you have learned few new things. You met some fantastic people. You interfaced with people who had a good positive rub-off with you. And how do you convert that into differentiation? Because if you ultimately weave and say the world has billions of people, billions of resources, we are a small entity in this entire stratosphere. How do you make a difference? Is what, according to me, has got to be the first thread on which you need to weave your entire life pattern. Because if you can create a differentiation, you can make a difference, you will start thinking it that way. Because then you will demystify things to unravel that. And I'll give you a simple case in point. I was positioned when I came to Tata's, I joined them and immediately we were bidding for Delhi distribution and Mr. Tata told me that, listen, while you have also not done distribution in your previous organization, but we believe you have the desire to make a difference. So this is a ardent task. So why don't you go to Delhi and be our maiden CEO and MD for the enterprise? So I landed up there on July 2002, which is when we took over Delhi Vidyut Board. And to cut the long story short, I kept to myself saying, we stand in front of deity and pray that God make me a better human being. Or, some of you said, I'm not sure whether I'm spiritual. I'm not sure what's the purpose that I'm looking for. There can't be a better purpose than to say, can I do something to make a discernible difference to the enterprise and the community at large? And I think there I was in the middle of something which interfaced with both. A reckless enterprise, where I would say the McKinseys of the world, the Bechtels of the world can't give an incremental idea of how manipulation can be done. They were state of art in manipulating. They were state of art in gratification. You can't get them to get one more ideas in terms of how a bribery can be added further. They were at the zenith of that. Now, we were just 6 of us, which landed from Mumbai into Delhi soil. And everyone at that time, Mr. Vajpayee was the Prime Minister. And if every person that we will meet on the street was related to Mr. Vajpayee. So this is typical Delhi for me. And therefore, to transform that institution and win people's kind of affection was the big differentiation that I started to pursue as a differentiation. To cut the long story short, 4.5 years later, when I moved back to Mumbai, I had left an institution where the enterprise was, had moved from 1,500 crore loss every year to 650 crore PAT positive every year.
Amazing.
The institution had left all the vices that it was popular for. The same very staff which will go and ask for bakshish and ask for bribery against every part, loved to service the customer. And I used to tell them, now stand in front of the deity and say, God, give me a good reason to service a customer today. And because the customer manifests the God that you are standing in front of and seeking that favor. And then, 4.5 years later, when I was leaving and everything else, we got best of awards. We got the Edison Award, which is the best recognition for a distribution company. We were benchmarking ourselves to the best run discoms like Hong Kong Light or Florida Light and Power, and not to just Indian stuff. So everything great was happening in that institution. And we had people from management schools who were doing solidaries to us from the second year onwards, writing stories about what decisions were taken right, wrong, etc. Now, so you could create differentiation, you could bring about transformation, but eventually that differentiation, which till date holds and stands that institution in good stead. Because once you move out, should happen that the institution takes a U-turn. How how sustainable has one made it, and how you created and enshrined those values. Because according to me, values are values only if they are valued. Otherwise, they can all be talked about. You can talk about, integrity, you can talk about courage, you can talk about, the fact that people have to be, showing loyalty. Many of you talked about those words, but only when people start valuing. That means, can you build conviction in people? That wonderful. Can you people demonstrate this to the guy in front? And I have a very simple formula that I'll tell you. If you consider Anil Sardana as your ideal, okay, you must build conviction to say, can I share my vice or my gap or my weakness with him, to a point that I tell him, listen, I used to smoke till yesterday. Anilji, I am telling you that I will not smoke from tomorrow. And then remember him that I consider him as my ideal. Let me live up to that value. So it's not very distant that you need to go down to deities or to become spiritual. There are people within us. It could be a mother, it could be a sister, it could be a wife, it could be a brother, it could be your teacher. Whomsoever you believe is the guy that you will not like to breach on. Share with them and say, this is the promise that I've made on 1st of this year. I want to live up for the next 12 months and then make it as a habit. I think you will start to value what is inside you, coming as your internal conviction to live up to that. So I guess those are some of the fundamentals that I've practiced. I have also been very clear in terms of what is the difference between preaching and practicing. Well, I've been making that point to say it's very easy to preach. As Indians, we talk about safety. As Indians, we talk about many other things. But how many times we really practice it? Someone is not overlooking our shoulders will be very different. So therefore, that's what I'm saying. You must have the picture. If you're putting accelerator beyond what it ought to be speeding, remember your ideal, that you have somebody that you have promised that I would want to practice safety. And that's how you must live within yourself and not go very distant in terms of gods and deities and stuff like that. Because I guess then you start to practice it. And once you practice, it happens. And there are many more things like this in life that I have enjoyed doing. I live every day to enjoy, and I talk about today. So people say that, look, I am very good in formulating strategy. This is where I've been even hired to look at making group strategies, but I won't want to take that claim. I would say I live up to a day. And of course, to understand that how the days ahead will be as good or as brighter as today, one must do a bit of planning and create outlays and road maps and do a bit of future thinking. But learning from the past and not brooding and living happily for today, I think should be the key motto. And if we are able to do that, I want to just close by one factor, and I'm conscious of the fact that my time is coming to an end. Many of us as Indians in our DNA exhibit values and culture by fear factor. There is an embedded fear in all of us. It may be coming from the fear of failure. It could be fear of unknowns. It could be fear of the fact that what will somebody else say? And many more. So I don't want to elaborate, but I'm sure each one of you have understood. This fear drives a lot of our culture. And many times the facade, if you unveil, you'll find what's deep inside, which is driven by the fear factors. Now, if people can gradually and over a period of time practice means and mechanism to come over this fear by sharing openly those fears, talking about those fears, including the fact somebody may not be very great in finance, somebody may not be very great in a particular trait, exhibiting and saying, no, I'm as good, will create a deep inside of fear because you are not open And if you're not open, somebody will not be able to help you. And I guess it's important, therefore, for our younger friends especially, to understand this fear factor within them and be more loud and open, more vociferous in terms of the fact, what's that fear and how their entire action, their candor is being driven by that fear deep inside that they're not exhibiting, and therefore they're creating a facade. And that actually is not value. That actually is something which will not hold you in good stead when you have got to be tested. And therefore, it's important that people must dispense with that fear and develop candor, which is more inside out being sane. And then the walk the talk will automatically be fabulous, and you will start enjoying life. So I'll stop here and perhaps weave these thoughts into some of the other communication once the questions start coming in. Thank you, Anil.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Anil. That was so very nice to hear. And may I request the audience to start asking questions on particularly related to this topic of purpose and how purpose is so important. Anil, I want to connect this purpose conversation that we are having on an individual also to a collective purpose of an organization and indeed of a community or a nation. And I'm curious to know, through your own experience, you have worked in various organizations, where did you find your own sense of values and purpose most aligned with an organization or a context that you were part of? And help us to understand that.
The question is very relevant, and I would answer, if my purpose and values don't align with the organization, they won't see me there. So the 4 organizations that I worked in my life, the 4 brands, I started, as I said, leave the first few months, but main NTPC, 14 long years, then BSCS 7.5 long years, then Tata's for almost 20 years, and now 4 years. So this 4 brands is what I have worked. And within Tata's, of course, I worked in different enterprises. That's part and parcel of how you move around there. And I would say everywhere I connected with my purpose, and I found the values were made in alignment with that purpose. And I clearly could influence the values of others to not be in loggerheads with that, because otherwise we will both be in disarray, or most of us will be in disarray. And I would, to that extent, even say that in Tata Power, where I was the group CEO and MD, Anil, this is something very fascinating that people, till date talk about. We actually had a position called Chief Culture Officer, which was a formal position. And the objective was that when people see 10 guys standing with a bag at the airport, they should know all of these 10 people belong to the same organization, because their candor, their way of talking, their obsequiousness, everything actually reflects common values, common culture. And therefore we said, in today's system, culture can be enshrined, it can be influenced. And we had a colleague of ours who did a damn good job in terms of actually parameterizing that, and then in the pursuit achieving miles of work. So hats off to him. He did a superb job. All of us learned a lot from him.
Very nice. I think Priyanka, go ahead and ask the question that you wanted to ask. Go ahead, Priyanka.
Yeah, sir. Thank you. Sir, you were talking about fear, right? So I would like to know how you overcome your fears during, when making challenging decisions in your life.
So Priyanka, the answers are not easy. The fear, first of all, is of varying degree, and it exists every day. It's not that the fear is of a particular monster variety that you can, bring that to the fore and deal with that. It could be, till today, I may be scared of lizard. So if I go to Taj Exotica, which is, kind of in the open area, I will first go around the room and see if there was a possibility of a lizard coming. So fears can be anything. And as I said, fear could be of unknowns. Now, how do you deal with that in terms of being expressive to people who could help? So could you actually express this to Taj in terms of the fact that would it be possible for you to do the best so that there is no such outcome? I'm saying, how many people would want to think about saying that? But if you said that, you're past the problem and somebody else will solve it for you. Now, similar fears could be of the fact that, will I fail? Did you discuss with the HR guy to say, listen, my differentiators are the following. Now that you have hired me, can I look at the development plan in terms of the need of the job? This is an area that I still need a little bit more exposure. So can you put a local mentor, input provider who could help me with this part? Many people won't do that. And if you don't do that, nobody can help you. So I would say these things are the ones which one has to start practicing by being a little more open, especially with, like I said, people that you believe you have faith in. And if you have faith, share it with them, because in today's world, people say, declaring too many things to people is also bad, but ultimately you've got to decide who are the people that you can trust. And if that's the case, people will start trusting in you too. And therefore, that clearly adds a value to yourself, because being trustworthy is also a value. So I guess the fear factor is one hell of a drag that people must, and there can be various synonyms to the fear word. So it's not just fear. It could be inhibition. It could be, some negativity that comes in. It could be, many other aspects that you detest, you don't like. It could be vices that makes you out of control. So there can be many such aspects. These are all renditions of the similar concept, but how do you work on it is the factor. And there are ways these days, fortunately, there are many ways that you can be helped, provided you discuss with people that you can trust.
Sanjeev Tripathi of the Osram Group is asking a question. He's saying, human beings have infinite power within, and we are the second most populated nation in the world. How can we as individuals design our own purpose, which give us more focus rather than just be a journalist and only talk about different things? So how can we really get much more focused, and how can we keep reading and learning and hearing so as to help us to put sharp focus? Any particular insights about how we as Indians could develop this greater sense of purpose to contribute to the nation?
Yeah. So Sanjeev, while there can be several answers to this point, but I will begin by saying, by being journalist is also a great possession, because you also need solid citizens. By being specialists, of course, or people who, as you said, have focus or differentiation, that's another trait that's welcome or desirable. So I would say every kind of person is needed in the society. And we need to get our pack of cards in such a way that the whole thing becomes wholesome, the whole thing becomes useful, and we are a performing orchestra. Because it's not necessary that everyone needs to play violin or everyone needs to play guitar. We also need people who've got to fix the whole thing together. We got to have people who would make sure that they will get the display boards, readable enough before the people, the standees being good enough and stuff like that. So everything is important. So to me, I would say, as long as the troop becomes clear that this is the outcome orientation that we are all clearly working towards, and the general who commands this troop, or the leader who's at the helm of affairs, is able to bring clarity in terms of that outcome, we all deliver that purpose. Now, in between, if this leader or any of the people don't have integrity of purpose, because of his own lurching fears or his own background, he has a facade in which he talks about outcome. But, he is fixing people. He is trying to, give assignment to somebody who's lackadaisical in that particular trait. And he's, kind of switching people. Then automatically the truth will fail. So the integrity of purpose with people having differentiation and people being journalists, all of that, according to me, is welcome. I would say one of the things that I've enjoyed the most is to transform people's thinking and build performing teams. I gave you example of Delhi. I can give you example of the current assignment. I can give you example of how we launched Tata Docomo. How do we launch Tata Photon? And from nowhere, how did we, create some of those brands? And same very people who till yesterday people were saying DVB is incurable. Those were all dumped. Today they are the most performing people, same very people. We've not got people from anywhere else. It's the same people from the same society. So I would say have faith in people, and people are fantastic. As long as you can drive that clarity in terms of what's the outcome that you're looking at, and then have integrity of purpose.
Dr. Mansi Handa, who is from our partner university in Canada, the Royal Roads University. She has joined the program, so welcome Mansi for being here. And she's asking a question. First of all, she's saying a very inspiring talk, and she's thanking us for inviting her. And she says, I completely agree that values are embedded in us because of some fear, but I think this fear is a part of our upbringing. Somehow, somewhere a part of our culture, and it's very difficult to get out or against our culture. So how can you get out of it? And she's saying that because it's so part of the deeply embedded, because right from our childhood perhaps, and otherwise through our upbringing and our education, we tend to put fears into our children. So how do we get out from that deep-rooted fears?
First and foremost, Mansi, good morning to you, and thanks for joining, and thanks for your kind words of motivation. It's not necessary that every fear results into a negative rub-off. Many times, as you rightly said, parents put fear of, teachers, fear of the fact that you will fail, fear of many other things to make better individuals. And many of us have learned out of that. So you're right, absolutely saying that the fear which results into a positive development of values is welcome. But many times this fear also turns people to then actually find alternate means to create a facade. For example, if in some family the parents are very strict, you could have two kind of children development. One, that the child becomes very disciplined. The other is child then starts to hide from parents and therefore does acts which are subversive, but without knowledge of parents. It could get into meeting friends who could get them into drugs and get them into wrong habits. And we've seen that happening at least in several other societies. And I wouldn't want to get into that details. Therefore, it's important that when we talk about us as individuals, we are aware at least which fear is resulting into a positive embodiment and which fear is resulting into something that I'm covering up. But deep inside, it's bothersome. And I think I'm talking about that part. I need to be eloquent with people whom I believe, whom I trust, and try and see what's the mitigation which is not going to let that fear impede my progress in life. And I guess that's a limited point I will touch at this stage.
Okay. Rakesh Jinsi, who is the president of the SOS Children's Village in India and a former president of SOIL and also a colleague in Aisha for many years, Rakesh is asking a question that given the nature of electricity generation business, its political implications and government involvement, how do you see this sector, in the future, and how does that connect with this whole conversation on purpose and values? So what's your larger prognosis of this sector, and how do you see this developing in the future?
First and foremost, I must compliment him for what he did or is doing at SOS. I too am connected. Chandelier, who's the chairman, is a great friend of all of us, Anil included. We've been working closely with him at CII. So I am too also honored that there are children that I support, and I wish those children will do very well in their lives, because it's a great institution that's been doing an honorable job. Coming back to the part, I just lost the last part. You said in the electricity sector, or which sector you talking about?
No, electricity generation business, because of the political implications and government involvement, it's quite a complex thing and a lot of politics in this whole sector. And here we are discussing purpose and values. So how
I think we take it for granted that it's very government. It's not. It's in India. So if you're talking about in India, it's got to change. Today, you should know that what used to be in 2000, you talked about generation. Let me very quickly explain for the listeners. There are three clear parts to this puzzle, which is generation, bulk transmission, and then wires, which is close to our homes, and then the retail distribution. So these are the parts to this puzzle. Today, generation is largely with private sector. The government is getting decimated by the day. Transmission, which was monopoly of the government-run institution, today is started to be largely being done by the private sector in India, I'm talking about. We are, for example, Adani Transmission is one of the largest private sector transmission company in India. And the last but not the least, the wires and the distribution, which today is largely held by state-owned enterprises, is the next one which is going to be reformed, because 89% of that is still with state-owned enterprises, 11% is only with private sector. But one should not just give up. I gave you an example of Delhi, where we reformed and transformed what was ailing to such a profitable institution, where today people are enjoying that advantage. Today in Mumbai, Ahmedabad, Surat, Calcutta, where private sector is running, people are enjoying the electricity. So within this very country, we have examples of how this sector can actually be cured. Now, what's the way that I'm looking at it? You see, according to me, ultimately, the consumer is the king. And it's my dream that in next 5 years, consumer will buy electricity same way as buys telecom options today. So let me explain in a minute. In telecom today, from the phone, I can have postpaid, I can have prepaid, I can buy SMS pack, international calling pack, day ahead pack, month ahead, everything is possible. Exactly the same thing will be possible in electricity, where you will from your phone buy the day ahead pack or a night pack or the green pack or a hydro pack or a nuclear pack or whatever you want to buy. And then you'll get an OTP and you press it on your meter and start billing the pack that you opted. And today I'm able to demonstrate that in one of our locations where we have done the simulation of that. And I'm sure time is not very far that we will have to vest this power at the hands of the customer. And the customer must make choice. And it's bound to happen. Nobody can stop it, because according to me, customer power is supreme.
Wonderful. And by the way, Anil, Rakesh Jinsi actually took over from Sandelia, because Sandelia stepped back.
Okay, that's interesting.
Rakesh has done 2 jobs earlier. He was the overall head, and now he's also in position of Sandy. That's what he's doing.
He's doing an amazing job, I must tell you that.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I think we are one student who's potentially probably about to join SOIL, or Soumya Gaur, she's saying studying in an institution like SOIL will definitely strengthen our leadership skills. But she says, but she believes that she herself and students would have to put 100% efforts because success cannot be achieved without making self-effort. Do you agree with this, that, it's only your own effort that will take you far? Any particular response to that?
As I said, your efforts convert that word into integrity of purpose. You can't be dishonest to yourself. And as I said, the more facade you build, the more you will ultimately deviate from what your purpose are. You will never be able to come to terms with yourself. So to me, everyone makes efforts. So it's only that at times we create these facades which waste a lot of time. The parents give you a tablet and you're watching movies in that. Now, parents also know that that tablet can support movies. Not that parents don't know it, but they expect that you will exercise integrity of purpose and therefore spend at least 2 hours a day, blogging that and looking and doing technical scanning and learning from them. Now, if you're calling that as a breach of effort and not putting the effort, I agree with you. But my definition of that is integrity of purpose. Why are you doing something? That you should be very clear.
Very nice.
And exactly. Sorry. Right.
Very nice. Anil, it has been an absolute joy to be in your presence this evening. Here are the 5 things I learned from you today. Number 1. Normally, people talk about learning the positives from their seniors and elders, but you took the courage today to say that I saw my father in action, and I'm sure you love him, but you saw certain behaviors of a government official which you did not agree with. And you said, how can people hold that power to this extent that the other people who work with them are more, like you used a strong word like slavery? So it's very interesting that at a young age, you decided this is not who I want to be. It's a very, very discerning choice that you made, number 1. Number 2, you made a very telling comment about finding purpose. You said whichever institution you joined, you had that deep sense of ownership that I am here, I have to do my very best, and I have to help in building this institution. So you discovered purpose in the context that was given to you. And you said all the 4 institutions you were part of, you developed that complete sense of ownership. I have to strengthen the institution. That's a wonderful gift you gave to yourself and to the institution. Number 3, you said, the purpose comes to you when you really want to make a difference. And you told us that this strong desire to make a difference, if you have it inside you, then no matter what happens, and that wonderful story, 6 of you, Mr. Tata tells you, go to Delhi, this most difficult, and you said it was like the epitome of how not to run an organization, where instead of having values, there was the opposite of values. And here 6 of you go there. And then you begin this process of bringing about change one day at a time. And you said something very powerful. You said, every day is an opportunity to live your purpose. Every day from the 6, it became many. And to see this remarkable change in 5.5 years, you bring that sense of pride in an organization to say, we are proud that we are doing it the right way. We are delivering excellent service, but we are also in the process making the organization sustainable and profitable. That's a wonderful example of how making a difference can be practiced every day. And from a complete situation of hopelessness, bring the joy of pride where every person takes that ownership. Number 3. Number 4, you said to us, you gave a fantastic idea to everybody. You said, you want to make a change in yourself, have the courage to make a commitment to somebody you idolize. Could be anybody. You don't have to go to a deity or a temple. You can find God around you, in the living people around you.
Absolutely.
And you open your heart and say, you know what, this is something that I want to change in myself. And in front of you, I'm making this commitment today. And I would like to hold myself accountable, because every time I walk away from it, I'm going to let you down, because so what a wonderful and powerful idea you gave. And lastly, you gave us that experience that, life is full of learning every day. You said, if you are willing to learn every day, if you have a sincerity of purpose, and you use the word facade at least 10 times today. So don't try to be who you are not.
Yeah.
Forget all this showing something. If you have that real sincerity of purpose, then whatever effort you will make, it will bear fruit. There is no way it will not bear fruit. So Anil, thank you very much for this gift this evening. It's been a most inspiring talk, and I'm sure my fellow panelists agree that we have done ourselves a favor by inviting you this evening. Thank you very
Thank you so much. In fact, likewise, I learned how beautifully you articulated all these 5 points. And, one says and one sort of continues to do few things, but the way you made it into a treasure, makes me more humbling. So thank you so much, Anil. I really appreciate all the panelists and all the listeners. Thank you so much for having me here. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.